Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. The Phils rout the Giants in the series finale, and Bryce Harper does something he's never done in his career. Is he officially back to being himself? Maybe. We'll talk about it on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me for some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air over at 97.5 The Fanatic, doing sports talk radio here in Philadelphia for the better part of, almost 6 years now at this point. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for 4 seasons, and this is now my 4th year as the host of Locked On Phillies. Please make sure that if you're checking us out in podcast form, you're rating and reviewing. We are available wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're watching us on the YouTube, hit that subscribe button. All of that will get you notifications when new episodes are posted. It's free. It's easy. It really helps us out. So if you like the content we put out here on Locked On Phillies, make sure you do that. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase with our friends over at Game Time. The Phils rout the Giants in the final game, 13-0. They ran it up. Every single starter in the lineup had an RBI, and Bryce Harper was a monster. So we're going to talk about whether or not he is back to his old self. We're also going to get into a conversation on Jesus Luzardo, who had a great start yesterday. Who in the world is he as a starting pitcher for the Philadelphia Phillies? Because there's been some weird ups and downs for Jesus Luzardo pre-All-Star break. That was his final start before the break. So we'll evaluate that. And we're also going to do an off-day check-in on the standings, where the Phillies ranking out in some important numbers compared to their peers and record-wise compared to their peers. The Mets played a doubleheader today, so I might give you a little live check-in on some score stuff from the Mets. They got rained out last night because they were back here on the East Coast, the Phillies out west for all of this rain that we've gotten. But let's get into this Bryce Harper stuff because he was awesome yesterday. He goes 4 for 6, a homer, 3 doubles. He said after the game, in a different park, I might have had a 3-home run day. And he very well could have. He had 2 off the wall in San Francisco, which is a huge ballpark, especially in the alleys. And he was peppering the left center field fence. So it was a great performance by Bryce Harper. He hadn't had an extra base hit in like 46 or 47 at-bats leading up to yesterday's game. And now all of a sudden he has 4 in one game, which, by the way, he's never done in his career before. That was unbelievable to me when I saw that number. Bryce Harper has never had 4 extra base hits. He's still doing stuff at this point in his career that he's never done before, but that just shows you why he's still, he's Bryce Harper. He's great. And anytime you doubt him, and we've had this conversation before, maybe even earlier this year, the second people start going, well, I don't know, does Bryce still have it? Is this, that, or the other thing a problem? He has days like this, or stretches like we hope he's going to go on as a result of this. And he just reminds you, oh, yeah, that's why he's a generational talent, future Hall of Famer, one of the bigger free agent signings in the history of the Philadelphia Phillies, right? That's why he is who he is. But is he who he is? I know that sounded like a riddle. Let me break this down for you, right? Basically, the question now is one game from Bryce Harper showing what he showed yesterday, a great game. Don't get me wrong. I was excited. I'm still excited. I love to see him work the ball the other way with power, find gaps. Somehow only had 1 RBI in the game, but that's whatever. You win 13-0. I'm not really going to get caught up on that. Swung it well, saw it well, gotten some good counts, put everything together. Does that to you say Bryce Harper is back, right? Like, are you sitting there today listening to this podcast or watching us on YouTube and saying, oh, yeah, Bryce Harper is back? Look at all those morons that said, oh, we should worry about the wrist injury. If so, slow your roll, because one game does not a he's back make. All right. It's going to take more than that for me to be convinced that Bryce Harper is going to be more Bryce Harper than not for the Phillies this season. Now, it was a very, very encouraging game, and I'm not trying to pour cold water on anybody. You know I was excited. You follow me on Twitter, and you saw me putting out my tweets while he was going nuts. I was going nuts too. So I'm not saying like, oh, Bryce Harper actually stinks. You guys are all jumping the gun on him being back. I'm just saying that one good game, like guys have big time days, right? Weston Wilson hit for the cycle last year. And that's not a ricochet shot at Weston Wilson. Like I'm not trying to do that. By the way, we'll keep an eye on what's going on with Weston Wilson because he was removed from a game at AAA. Max Kepler had some shin issues, so maybe Weston Wilson will come back. Maybe it's Crawford time. I don't know, but that's a side point for a later conversation on a later podcast. My point is this. A lot of guys have good days. Now, Bryce Harper, when he does it, the reason that it feels different is because of all the stock that he has from his previous accomplishments in his career. This is not Weston Wilson hitting for the cycle where it's a cool moment. Bryce Harper is a guy where you can look back on years and years and years of top-level production. So when you see it, you're quicker to go, oh, he's back, because you believe in the player more, right? You have a higher bar set for the player. So when he shows you a glimpse of something, it means more coming from a player like Bryce Harper than a guy who's just having a good day. But part of the issue with the wrist injury is the management of it. Harper also said after the game yesterday, he feels great. Like he feels healthy. He feels strong. And that's good to hear. Now, of course, he's going to feel healthy and strong after a 4 extra base hit performance. But he's not the type of guy that you expect to lie to the fan base, right? He's not a guy who's not forthcoming with information. Bryce Harper is not a BSer, for lack of a better term. This is a guy that'll tell you when things are going good and tell you when things are going bad. And he doesn't speak unless he's got something to say. So I'm inclined to believe that he feels pretty good right now. But the idea of this wrist injury is not he can't play with it. It's how does he manage it? Does it begin to get sore again as the season goes on? Is it as good tomorrow as it was yesterday? And I know they have an off day, which is really, really good for him to get a chance to rest that and be ready to go for the Padres series. But that's the thing you got to remember. There will still be days off for Bryce Harper. There will still be days where I'm sure the wrist is more sore than others. So it's not just a question of, can Bryce Harper still hit the ball out of the yard? Yeah, of course he can. He's Bryce Harper. Now, can he do it consistently enough over the course of a month stretch, which is what the postseason is, to positively impact this team to the level that we expect a player of Bryce Harper's caliber to? And I'm not quite there yet, right? Because one game, what if he's sore today? What if it's just I don't know. He has 5 days out of the week that he feels good, but 2 days out of the week, the wrist is pretty sore and he doesn't put together the same at-bats. In the postseason, if one of those 2 days ends up being an elimination game, well, that could change the course of everything you work for. So I'm not quite there yet. I want to see more, and I want to see it sustained. Me and my guy, John Kincaid, who I work with on the morning show over at 97.5 The Fanatic, we're talking about this morning. And John said a pretty darn good line. He said, for the rest of the month, we're setting the line at 10.5 RBIs. Because my follow-up question to, is Bryce Harper back to you, which we both said no to, because got to see more, right? I'm excited about what we saw. That was a very, very encouraging performance. But the follow-up question to that was, well, if he's not back, based on what he did yesterday in San Francisco in the 13-0 performance, and credit to the rest of the lineup, and we're going to talk about Jesus Luzardo coming up. I don't want to make this just like Bryce Harper carried them. Schwarber goes yard. I mean, everybody hit. Woo! Missed that guy. And it was a good game in general for the Philadelphia Phillies. But the focus on Bryce Harper is key because, he's Bryce Harper. But if he's not back based on yesterday's performance, what is the line? So we said 10.5 is the line for RBIs for the rest of the month of July. If he gets 11 or more RBIs for the rest of the month, feel good saying, yeah, he's back. And we're comfortable with where Bryce Harper is. If he gets less than that, well, then we're still at a point where we're trying to figure out how much he can impact this team. And it's not like if he gets 10, he's washed. If he gets 11, he's perfect. There's no issues. There's nuance to the conversation. But I think that's a fair line to set for the impact that you expect from Bryce Harper and seeing if he can provide that over the rest of the month of July. I also think it's fair because, they have 14 or 15 games left, and they have the All-Star break, so he should be rested pretty well for a good amount of those games. He will not be going to Atlanta as a member of the National League All-Star team. Missed time, hasn't been as productive. I'm not losing my mind over that, even though Trey Turner and Christopher Sanchez should be there. But he should have a good amount of rest this month. He should have a good amount of opportunity this month. He seems to be starting to see the ball much better. So we'll see. And if he does that at the end of the month of July, we'll reevaluate. If he tears the cover off the ball in the next, 2 weeks, All-Star break notwithstanding, then we may accelerate that timeline a little bit and be like, wow, I can't even believe we worried about this guy. But I'm not at the point where the people who are worried about his wrist injury were alarmist. No, it's still a very fair point of conversation. I'm also not at the point where the people who are saying he's back, I'm not going to call you completely crazy because he is Bryce Harper, but I'm not quite there with you. I'm not going to jump the gun on this one because I've seen too many times. I don't know. Like let's think about it. In Aaron Nola bad seasons, right? And we didn't really have this great start this year, but he has like 3 or 4 rough starts, and then he throws a gem, and we're like, okay, he found something. And the next start, he goes out there and gets shelled. Like there's fool's gold out there in baseball sometimes. So you got to see more than just one day. But it was awesome to see that from Bryce Harper. And congrats to him on 4 extra base hits in a game, first time in his career. You feel pretty darn good about seeing him do that and think, yeah, this guy's still got moments in him. And hopefully plenty of them. It was just very murky there for a little bit. And it could have just been a bad stretch at a bad time that coincided with the wrist injury that maybe had less to do with it than because he was talking about getting into counts that were more advantageous for him. Maybe he was just pressing because the offense had been struggling a little bit and it had nothing to do with the wrist. I don't know, but we're going to find out as more games get played. Now, the Phils have an off day today, so later on we are going to do our off day standings check-in. But Jesus Luzardo, he earned his off day, just like Bryce Harper did. The offense wasn't the only upside of the Phillies' win yesterday. Luzardo goes 7 shutout. Who in the world is he as a pitcher, though? We're going to try and figure this out as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Let's talk a little bit about game time, though, because have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day, and you suddenly realize that you want to be in the stands. Well, that's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes it all possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. They've thought of everything. And Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming MLB game. Now, we're about to head into the All-Star break, and the Phils don't have any more home games. But when they come back, the Phils are going to be playing the Angels that Friday night. Not this Friday, but next Friday. They will be taking – next Friday? Maybe it's even one after. Anyway, the Phillies will be playing the Angels. That's the 5th spot in the rotation. It could be Andrew Painter's debut. I don't know. If you want to figure it out, though, and get last-minute tickets so you know who's starting, Game Time has it. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed with our friends over at Game Time. Let's talk about Jesus Luzardo, because as much as I'm still questioning, well, what Bryce Harper are the Phillies going to get for the remainder of the season? I find myself questioning what Jesus Luzardo are the Phillies going to get for the rest of the season. He's had such a weird pre-All-Star break debut for the Phillies. It doesn't really feel like a debut because now he's been here for months, but in his first year here in Philadelphia, he has looked like a Cy Young candidate, the worst pitcher in baseball, a guy who's trying to figure out why he looks like the worst pitcher in baseball, and now back to, well, I don't know, mechanical imbalance, but great stuff when he's going good. Like, I don't know. He's got significantly more great starts than he does bad starts. But the numbers have been heavily impacted by those bad starts because giving up 8 earned runs, 12 earned runs, like that will inflate an ERA, believe it or not. So the numbers are not a great indicator. You can't really look at the ERA or the WHIP because those starts really ballooned. I almost said platooned. I think I was going to merge balloon and platoon somehow. They ballooned those numbers. There you go, Connor. Proud of you, kid. And that kind of takes it out of the conversation to evaluate him fairly because we have to make a determination Is he both of these guys? Well, he can't be. He can't be 7 shutout innings and also 2 innings, 12 earned. Like that's just not a fair. There's too much area in between those two performances to be like, well, he's both those guys. Now I lean much more towards, and I'll almost always go with the heavier sample size. That's why I lean more towards he's a really good pitcher and he's important for the Philadelphia Phillies going forward. And yesterday showed that. He dominated the Giants, was a big part of the way they won that baseball game because, God forbid, you have a ridiculous performance at the plate. And next thing you know, you got a starter out there who gives up 6 or 7, and you're fighting with your bullpen to try and stay in a game that you should win every time. Right? So Luzardo got the job done. But in the first half, he's had these weird little quirks in the storyline of Jesus Luzardo. So let's take you through it, right? Let's try and figure out through what's happened to him this year who Jesus Luzardo really is. So he starts out, and he's dominant to start the year. We get our first point of information through his first month and a half's worth of starts. He is really, really good. When he's feeling good and throwing well, this dude can be a force. He can be as good as just about anybody in the Phillies rotation and one of the better pitchers in baseball. That's a great thing. So we know that about him. We know where his ceiling is. He showed us that in the first month and a half. Then there's the weird stretch with the Brewers and the Blue Jays starts where he gives up 12 and 8 back to back. And you say, okay, well, what in the world's going on here? Is he hurt? Did he just turn into a pumpkin? Because his career numbers are right around that 4 ERA mark. So some people saw that and saw reversion back to the mean. What I saw was potentially tipping pitches because there was no good explanation for it if he wasn't hurt, right? Like you don't just throw that month and a half and then just lose it that quick. 2 separate starts, back-to-back times, different opponents, not the best lineups in baseball by any means, the Brewers and the Blue Jays. Not that they're bad teams, but they weren't. It's not like you went Dodgers, Cubs. Like I get that. He's actually owned the Cubs, beaten the Dodgers, just shut down the Giants. He's thrown well against good competition this year. So that's another point that we'll get to when we look at the totality of Jesus Luzardo. But I always thought it was tipping pitches. I talked about it on the podcast back then when it was happening, and he made a little bit of a change. He set his hands a little bit higher. Now, in setting his hands a little bit higher, he was able to mask the pitch that he was throwing. But what he did was he threw off some mechanical stuff. I believe we talked about this in yesterday's episode where coming set higher can throw off the arm angle and all of that stuff. And you got to get to a different spot in a different way. And you could lose some command. And losing 2-3 inches of command at the major leagues is the difference between a strikeout and a double in the gap, right? It's very, very fine margins pitching at that level. So he makes that change. And then he struggles with some inconsistency because of making that change and trying to get used to it. And I don't know that he's finally gotten used to it. I don't know if we'll see more up and down stuff for him. That's for the post-All-Star break part of the schedule to decide. But what I will say is he's settled into it more to the point where not only does he have the confidence that he's not tipping pitches, but he now has more confidence that he can pitch the way that he has to avoid tipping pitches. And then, again, I brought it up already, but we'll go back to this as part of the Jesus Luzardo story. He's beaten some really good baseball teams this year. He's been really good against playoff opponents. Outside the Brewers and the Blue Jays, which also look like they could be the Blue Jays, yes, the Brewers maybe, postseason opponents. Well, you look at that and you say, okay, that was the tipping pitches stretch, and you've beaten some really good baseball teams. So all of this leads into this topsy-turvy idea of who Jesus Luzardo is to his team. I think we know one thing. He's a good pitcher, right? He's a good 4th pitcher in a rotation. He'd probably be a good 3rd pitcher in most rotations in baseball. But playoffs aren't about what you do over 162. If they were, the Phillies would have more consistent success in the postseason because they had the 2nd best record in baseball last year. They were out in the divisional series in their first playoff action. So what it is your confidence in a guy to go out in one game and shove. And I don't know where people sit with that on Jesus Luzardo. Like right now, you could tell me Jesus Luzardo is going in an elimination game for the Philadelphia Phillies, and that would equally excite me and scare the living daylights out of me. So who is he to you? I'd love to hear from you in the comments to the video on YouTube. Who is Jesus Luzardo as a Philadelphia Phillies starting pitcher to you? Is he this great pitcher that just had a bad stretch? Is he this up and down Aaron Nola-esque guy where you never know what you're going to get from him, but when it's good, it's really, really good? Is he a guy that's going to end up probably right on his career watermark around 4 ERA, which is not anything spectacular, and just be like a fourth throw-in arm in a playoff rotation? He is all of those things right now. You know what? I use this expression a lot because I guess maybe I'm just like a physics and relativity guy, but he's Schrodinger's starting pitcher. We don't know who he is until you open the box that day and see if he's alive or dead on the mound, right? If you don't know that, look up Schrodinger's cat. But bottom line is you got to see how it plays out. And he is both good and bad depending on, I don't know, any given day. And if we get more in the second half, which I expect we will, more positive than negative, everything will even out to him having a pretty darn good year for the Phillies. I just wonder where the confidence level is in him as far as a postseason appearance would be. It's July 10th, so we're not quite there yet. We got 2+ months to go before we even have to start looking towards October. But this is the time of year where we start to figure out, well, who do you have, what do you need, and where are you going? And Luzardo is a big part of that, even though we still haven't totally locked down who he is as a starting pitcher. We also haven't totally locked down who this Phillies baseball team is as a team, but we have some numbers. It's an off day, so that means we're going to check in on the standings around baseball and where the Phillies fit in as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Let's talk about open phone, because if you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time that you had a service emergency, like a burst pipe maybe. If the first plumber that you called didn't answer, are you sitting there and waiting? Are you leaving a voicemail? You got water pouring into your house and you're going to wait for a call back? No, you're going to call the next plumber. And that's why having a reliable business line is so important. And that's why you need open phone, because you want to capture those leads. You want to get those customers on the line with yourself or a representative and make sure that you're getting their business. Open phone is the #1 business phone system that helps you streamline and scale customer communication, all from an app on your phone or computer. Did you ever juggle 2 phones just to keep business and personal calls separate? Well, Open Phone solved that instantly. Your whole team can also share one number and respond to customers like a shared inbox. No more who's handling this. And the AI agent handles after-hours calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so that you never miss a customer again. They've got it all covered. And to make it even better, Open Phone is offering Locked On Phillies listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonmlb. That's Openphone, OPENPHONE.com/lockedonmlb. And if you have existing numbers with another service, don't worry about it. Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. That's why you got to check out openphone.com. Let's take a look at some Major League Baseball standings. We are 3 games away from the All-Star break for the Philadelphia Phillies. And for most teams in baseball, we're also going to take a look in at what's going on with the Mets today. Let's just see. The Mets lost to the Orioles in Game 1 of the doubleheader. I'm just now seeing this, and they're down 3-2. Now, they were earlier in the series down like 6-2 or something, or 6-0, or maybe it was 8-2 in an earlier game in like the 8th inning, and the Orioles blew it. So it was nice to see the Orioles take a game earlier today, and that means the lead in the division is different for the Phillies than the last time I checked. I've had a busy day. I used the off day to get some errands done, and of course, do a couple extra podcasts as well. So we're going to be recording some stuff, previewing the series with San Diego that will come out tomorrow on Friday, July 11th. But where the Phillies are in the standings with 3 games to the break, not bad. Not bad at all. They are 4.5 games off the best record in baseball, which is held by the Detroit Tigers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th best record in all of baseball. They're actually tied for 5th best with the Toronto Blue Jays, who sit at 54-39, just like the Phillies do. The teams ahead of them: the Dodgers, leading the NL West; the Cubs, leading the NL Central; the Houston Astros, who are leading the West out there for the American League; and then the Detroit Tigers, who are taking care of business in the Central. And then you've got the Philadelphia Phillies there. The Blue Jays are leading the East, by the way. Do I always mix up the Astros? Are they in the Central or are they in the West? I don't know. American League divisions. I probably should, considering I've watched baseball for every year of my damn life. But besides the point, the Phillies are leading the NL East. They are the 5th best record in baseball in a tie with Toronto. That's pretty darn good. Now, let's look at differential, because I always like to peek in at differential. And the nice thing about winning 13-0 and the losses the Phillies have, having been tight ones, is the differential starts to look a little bit better. And remember, I told you they had the 5th best record in baseball? Well, they're 7th in run differential. Previously this year, the Phillies had been like 4th or 5th in baseball with the 10th or 11th best run differential. And that is a sign that, okay, you're winning, but on the backs of your pitching. And you're not really beating down on the bad teams the way you should, just for fairness sake, right? Phillies are plus 65 in their run differential. The great Los Angeles Dodgers are plus 66. So it's not like there's this huge gap between them and another top team in baseball. Now, the Cubs are plus 124. That's a sign that their offense is just absolutely monstrous. I do think run differential is a great indicator of offense, because it shows you consistently how many runs you're scoring. If we go to runs scored, the Phillies are even a little bit further down. So lower in runs scored versus where you're at in differential shows you that you're creating that differential by scoring less runs on average, which means your pitching staff is above average, which we knew. They are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in baseball in runs scored. But you look at all of that and you say, okay, so the Phillies are no doubt a top 10 team in baseball. They're probably no doubt a top 6 or 7 team in baseball when everything is all said and done. So that's okay. Now, you want to get to a higher point, but we know that anyone in that top 5 to 6 range are the bona fide World Series contenders. Who truly are the World Series contenders, by the way? As we look at this, might as well get into that. And I think that we're in a situation where there are 5 or 6. I've been on this train for about a month now. The Tigers are true World Series contenders. The Dodgers are true World Series contenders. I think we got to put the Cubs in that list with the way their offense is going. We've got to put the Astros in that list with the way their pitching is going. We got to put the Phillies in that list because of quality of lineup and quality of starting rotation. And I think we're still going to keep the Mets in that list. Even though they've had a lot of injuries, I still look at that team. You know what? We might even add to the list because the Yankees are down there a little bit at 51 and 41. They've been struggling. I find it hard to believe that team that played in the World Series last year, or the Mets who were in the NLCS last year, are not truly still in it. But so let's go Yankees, Mets, Phillies, Astros, Cubs, Dodgers, Tigers. And Blue Jays fans or Brewers fans who see them up there in record might be like, why don't you believe in those teams enough? I don't know. Watching those teams play, I don't get the vibe that they're a consistently strong enough postseason contender to make it through. Like, Toronto's not going to knock off Detroit and the Yankees and the Astros in series. And Milwaukee's not going to knock off the Mets, the Phillies, the Dodgers, or the Cubs, the Dodgers, the Mets in consecutive series or anything like that. So that's why I don't see them as true contenders. Let's go to the National League now while we are breaking everything down. The Phillies have the 3rd best record in the National League. They're 1.5 games off the pace for best record in the National League. If you told me 3 games out of the All-Star break, you're going to be a 1.5 games behind the Dodgers, a game behind the Cubs, who you have the tiebreaker over, and you're going to have the 3rd best record in the National League, a game over the Mets, and say, okay, great, mission accomplished for the pre-All-Star break. Now, this can flip around with the series against San Diego. It's a tough series on the road, so still some to be determined before the All-Star break, but you feel good about that. And then you look at the division, and you say, okay, 1-game lead, Phil's Mets. That's it. Let's set the stage right now. The Marlins, they're not going to challenge for the division. The Braves, they're 13 games back from you. The Nationals are dead and have been dead. 15.5 back, bottom feeders in the division, fired their manager, fired their GM. So it's a 2-team race, and it has been for a little bit now. But in case you haven't caught up on that, Phillies and Mets are going to be duking it out for the latter part of the summer. That's the team to keep an eye on. We're to the point of the season where you start to scoreboard watch a little bit, and that'll only get up as we get into late July, August, and September. So the Phils are in pretty darn good standing record-wise. They're outpacing the 2008 World Series winning team, the 1980 World Series winning team, the 2022 World Series appearing team, the 2023 NLCS appearing team, right? The only team recently that they're not outpacing is last year's 24 team, and that's because they got off to such a hot start. But at 54-39, this is 15 games over 500 ball before the All-Star break. You'll take that every single darn time, even though the way they've gotten here has been a little bipolar. I called them just hilariously bipolar yesterday with the way that they played, coming off the 2 losses they had in games 1 and 2. But hey, what are you going to do? They're our baseball team, and they're pretty darn talented when they're going good. Coming up next episode, because that's all for today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about an intriguing baseball storyline that may affect the Philly strategy at the trade deadline, and not enough people are talking about it. Speaking of that, Matt Gelb of The Athletic wrote a great article about what he's learned about the Phillies trade deadline potential plans, and we're going to preview the series with the Padres. So a big Friday show coming your way, but that's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Thank you so much for joining us. Once again, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff that helps us out. And I'll talk to you tomorrow on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.